Welcome, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Whether you are here in our sanctuary or joining us online right now or catching up with this later, I am delighted to welcome you to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Berkeley for our annual Lawrence Lecture. I'm so delighted that you're here. This is a really fabulous congregation, a Unitarian Universalist congregation that does a great deal of work here in our spiritual community and works for justice in our community and in our world. And I'm delighted that you've come here to support this lecture, to take a little bit of time here with our folks, and to be here. And before I turn things over to Christina, who'll be introducing Keith, I have one more thing. Hold right there. Camille, my dear, could you come up here, please? Where's Camille? I want to give a huge shout out to the committee of folks who've helped to put this on. If you're on the committee, could you stand up, please? Or raise your hand. There are folks here in the back, not in the room, and this group has been ably led and inspired and visioned by the fabulous Camille Parker, and someone on the committee has made sure that you had these as a token of our gratitude for your leadership and work. So with that being said, let me turn things over to Christina Krevling, who will be introducing you to our fabulous speaker for the night. Christina? Oh, and I should have said I'm Reverend Michelle Collins, the minister here at UUCB, and happy to welcome you. I think I was supposed to start with that, wasn't I? All right. Oh, land acknowledgement. Do you have it with you? No. Okay, we here, I will now do it from memory. We planned this out ahead of time, can you tell? Here, UUCB sits on Huchen, the unceded territory of the Chochenyo-speaking Ohlone peoples here in this area. We say this to acknowledge that heritage and history and to articulate our responsibility and awareness of this land and our work towards reparations and equality and respect for them.
I just want to welcome you on behalf of the committee. This is the first time in 3 years that we've had a live Lawrence lecture, which we're very excited and bless your hearts, those who are live streaming at home. We appreciate you as well, but it's really nice to have real people in a real space. And we're very excited to have Keith Knight here as our speaker this year. Keith Knight's work first came to me in the 1990s in my afternoon newspaper, the San Francisco Examiner. And it was, I grew up with comics, I grew up with comic strips, I grew up with comic books. We had all been through DC and Marvel and Underground Comics and Raw and the Love and Rockets, and by the time we got to the 1990s, here came Keith Knight just arriving in my afternoon newspaper. And it was so striking because not only of the way he drew, but the fact that he was the character in the strip, and it was a black artist. But what struck me the most was at the heart of the strip. He was clear-eyed, he took on social injustice, then he could pivot to family relationships and aim straight at politics, but it was the combination of humor and humanity in the strip that I didn't see anywhere else, and it's still there. We now know him as an multiple award-winning cartoonist and the co-creator of Woke, a TV guy. And the show is almost as good as the strip itself. Keith Knight.
That was really nice. That was really nice. I was getting choked up back there. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me out here. And it's an honor to be the first presentation in person in 3 years, is it? It's my honor and privilege. And, you know, speaking to my folks at SpeakOut, I just said, like, there's nothing beats human interaction, human connection. And I think we are all missing that. We were all missing that. And so it's an honor to be back in front of everybody. And, you know, I hope you feel the same way. So thank you. Thank you. All right, it's all downhill from here. Since tying the knot a year and a half ago, a lot of readers have been asking me this question. Has this once macho he-master gone all soft now that I'm a married man? The answer is yes, I've gone all soft. Soft and supple. It's true. The best thing about getting hitched is being able to use all your wife's girly products in the bathroom. Stuff I wouldn't be caught dead buying in public. Okay, let's see. We got some anti-crab ointment, an anal wart remover, and a peach melba loofah scrub. Shh, not so loud with the loofah scrub. That's right, people. No more scrubbing the nether regions with lava soap for me. We've got rosemary and aloe vera and eucalyptus leaves infused with hibiscus shampoo, organic sea kelp and lamb semen exfoliating wash, colloidal oatmeal and placenta enema. Honestly, y'all, using this stuff does make a difference. A lot of folks have been noticing, gee, your skin feels terrific. So this is the gist of my comics, which is they're autobiographical comics, and hopefully I take some mundane thing that happens to me and I sort of riff on it, and hopefully make you laugh, and then punch you in the face with something kind of harsh. And this is where I learned it. I grew up in Boston, and this is the most famous picture from the Boston area as I was growing up. And you know, all I knew about it was about busing. That's all I could remember. But it is a very iconic picture. It encapsulates Boston, and it's all its Bostonian foolishness. But I think it's more than just Boston. I think it encapsulates the United States and all its foolishness. And we'll get to that later. But I never had a black teacher in grade school. And there was a study that I did a comic strip about that said if a black student has a black teacher between kindergarten and 12th grade, the likelihood of them going to college goes up 32%. I think part of that is to see somebody that looks like you, that is in this mentor position. I also think that the choice of the choice teachers have to teach has a lot to do with it. My first black teacher I didn't have until I was a junior in college. And he was an American literature teacher. And that American literature teacher assigned us Ralph Ellison, Richard Wright, Maya Angelou, and James Baldwin. And when someone asked, like, so why are you giving us all black writers? He said, this is an American literature class. I'm giving you all American writers. And that's exploded my head because all the years in school, we're taught that American literature is Mark Twain. And we always have this sort of awkward thing reading Mark Twain where, you know, the N-word gets thrown around anywhere. And I came to realize that we got more books, we were assigned more books where animals were the protagonists than people of color. And that matters. That truly matters. So after this class, my work went from like, stuff about keg parties to what it was like to be a black man growing up in America. And so my work reflected stuff like this. This is dedicated to that one black kid, the K Chronicles by Keith Knight. This is dedicated to that one black kid who lives in that tiny-ass town off the highway in the middle of nowhere. This is dedicated to that one black kid who was not into hip-hop in high school. Black Sabbath is not black, you know. This is dedicated to that one black kid who gets used as the reason why someone isn't a racist. I can't be prejudiced. My mom invited one to my 13th birthday party. This is dedicated to that one black kid with hair people want to touch all the time. Back off. Is it like a Brillo pad? This is dedicated to that one black kid who gets told they're not really black. Yo, man, brothers don't do what you do. Hey, it's a compliment coming from me. This is dedicated to that one black kid who gets asked by white folks why they can't use the N-word. Why ask me? I don't use it. But you could if you wanted to. This is dedicated to that one black kid who wonders if they measure up to the myth. This is dedicated to this one black kid. So I nicknamed this comic strip Black People Bingo, because whenever anyone sees it, they go, oh, that's me, and that's me, and that's me, bingo. And, this was microaggression. This is microaggressions before I even knew what the word was, but we've all experienced this. And honestly, this strip resonates with so many different marginalized people. This could easily be that one Latino strip, that one disabled strip. The one gay kid, that one gay kid, it translates so well. And that's the great thing about comics is telling the story, telling your personal story. This is what I love about autobiocomics, and people can relate to it, the humanity in it, some way, somehow. And so that's what I love about doing autobiocomics. This is another one of my favorite ones. It always amazes me the way people react when they first enter my bedroom. Holy smokes, what the hell are you doing with that blow-up doll? Folks are often surprised to find a Feel Me Up Wilbur doll in my bedroom, although I don't know why. Tickle Me Elmo may be the #1 doll for America as a whole, but Feel Me Up Wilbur has been selling like hotcakes in the black community. They come in quite handy, although not for the use the manufacturer had originally intended. And he's saying, taxi, saying, black man equals stabbed in back, off duty, off duty. But wait, look, black man plus white guy equals okie dokie. Get the hell in here, boys. You see, because 5 black men standing on a corner without Wilbur is a gang. But 5 black men standing on a corner with Wilbur is a basketball team with a coach. They're banned in Boston, so I bought a few to send to my friends back east. Oh my God, look, it's Hootie and the Blowfish. So this is a strip I did when I was in San Francisco in the Mission District, and I was trying to catch a cab, and I could not catch a taxi. And it wasn't until a white coworker of mine came up, and then I was able to catch it, lickety-split. The irony of it all is taxis have now been sort of overshadowed by Uber. So I purposely catch taxis, and they're super excited when they get attention and they pull up, and I look in the car, and then I go, nah, walk away. So, the thing is, karma will catch up to you eventually. In 1999, after doing the K Chronicles for years, I was asked to do another strip, and I came up with Think. Now, Think it was sort of the opposite of what the K Chronicles is, which is the K Chronicles is an autobiographical comic strip that is multi-panel. Think is a single panel, and I take the stuff from the news. So I'm able to take a lot of things that I can't flesh out into longer strips and then do these 1 or 2 shots. And so I'm just gonna, run through this really quick. Next one's the first one. I ever did. Denny's serving blacks since 1997, if signs told the truth. And this is based on a real thing. Denny's was sued for not, charging black people before they ate, serving whites even after they came in after blacks, stuff like that. So I'm going to run through them. Your sister had the baby, it's a boy. The exact moment radical black activist Thomas X realized that, yes, indeed, he was an Uncle Tom. What was promised, 40 acres and a mule. What was got, 40 ounces and a pit bull. This just in, police have just released the description of the alleged gunman who's been terrorizing the downtown area. Please don't let it be a black guy. Please don't let it be a Middle Eastern guy. Ha, they'll never catch me. Ah, the power of white privilege. Supreme Court leak. I need another beer. The penis monologues with Will Chamberlain, Jimi Hendrix, and Milton Berle. How was it? Way, way too long. So I like doing churches because the audience gets this joke more than the universities. I have to say, ask your parents about it. Ask your parents about it. You're doing this because I'm black, aren't you? Oh, now, see, why do you always have to play the race card? So, the race card, black on black crime, get over it. It was a long time ago. These are all things that white people say when they don't want to talk about something that we all need to talk about. And that is this country's issue with race. It is the biggest problem that we have in this country. It is everything that this country is about. Believe it or not, it is everything. And just being in the industry and writing about this stuff long enough, I see it perpetually happening the same thing over and over and over again. And if we don't have this awkward conversation, we're not going to get anywhere. For far too long, it's been dictated by when white people feel uncomfortable, which is 5.2 seconds. I've counted many times. We need to get past it and have real conversations. Not conversations like this. One night at Ye Olde Gallery opening, frankly, I don't care if a person is black, white, green, purple, or brown. Me too. Who the heck are all these green and purple folks white people are always talking about? The K Chronicles by Keith Knight. I'm sorry, I consider myself relatively open-minded, but I have to draw the line at purple people. I know this ain't PC, but purple people are nothing but barely civilized knuckle draggers. Believe me, I know. I sat next to one in second grade. When I was growing up, a purple family moved in next door, and the whole neighborhood started to smell like Fig Newtons. And I swear this one guy was hired at my job just because he was, well, you know. I heard green folks have 3 nipples. I think I'd better be going. Me too. Be careful walking back to your car, the purple people might get you. So yeah, here's the deal. Unless Avatar is a documentary, there are no blue people, there are no purple people, there are no green people, okay? And even if there were, you would care. You would be very concerned. That joke doesn't fly very well at a Comic-Con because there are green and purple and blue people. So, but if a green person came in here and sat next to you or behind you or in front of you, you'd be like, what is going on? So the thing I want to say is, don't say you don't care. You should care. You should care about diversity. You should care about having not only a diverse neighborhoods, diverse congregations, diverse workplaces, diverse boards. You should not, and I'm not saying just by race, you should have people, different income scales, different religions, different, I don't know, like everything. And it's like, you know, you guys are used to it, but when I showed up here yesterday, I've been eating my way across the Bay Area because the food that you have access to is incredible. The line of restaurants across the street from my hotel, it has more diversity than all of North Carolina. We should imitate what our palates do. Like, we should lead our lives like that. And so when people just say, I don't see color, like, that is not something to be proud of, okay? That's not, oh, you know, I don't really see you as black, which people have said, and I know every black person in this room it's happened to. That is not a compliment. That is like, I see black so negatively that when I like you, I stop seeing your color. And that is a problem, okay? Don't ever use the excuse of, you know, and I've had people say this to me, I'm not racist. My daughter married a black person, or, you know, I have a black dog. I need you to understand that, have you ever heard a man say, I'm not sexist, I'm married to a woman? Would you believe that if they said that? I'm not sexist, my mom's a woman. You wouldn't believe that, right? So, just, yeah, don't say stupid things. So, okay, so, again, people say, well, why is everything about race? Everything is about race. Every little thing is about race. You can give me any subject, and I will tell you the racial BS about it. And just some of the things that have come up like lately that I've seen in the news. We've all seen this black couple who had their house assessed, and it went for like $400,000, and then when they took all the black stuff out of it, any evidence of black people living there, and had their white friend do it, it was assessed at $700,000. That, and so when people sit there and go, well, that's not my fault, like, that's not, yeah, I get that's not your fault, but there is a system in place that allows that to happen. And the only way it's going to get dismantled or changed is us. It is up to us collectively. And more so, it's up to white people. Because white people, this is a white-run society. And I get that you benefit from it. But if you want to live up to the aspirations of what we say we are, then it's got to be dismantled. It has to be dismantled. And I don't know how to put it in a way that doesn't sound like somehow you're losing something, because I don't think you are. I think when you give everybody the ability to thrive and succeed, I think the whole thing gets lifted up. The whole thing gets lifted up. There's a great quote over there by Toni Morrison. It's like, you know, something about, like, if you have to have somebody on their knees so you can feel tall, that's something that you got to look at inside. And I think this country needs to look inside and sort of really understand why that is. All right. Back to the comics. So in 2008, I made the biggest mistake of my life. I launched a daily comic strip in the worst year of newspapers, the newspaper industry. So 2008 is when I launched this strip. And the reason why I did it is we were having our first kid, and my wife was like, I would really like to stay home and raise our kid, and so you'll have to make more money. So I was like, okay, I'll do a daily strip. And so I went from having 2 deadlines a week to 9 deadlines a week. And it was a nightmare, but it really is one of those pinnacles when you're a cartoonist. Like, yeah, I want to do a daily comic strip. I just did it 20 years too late. But it was a really amazing experience. And actually, one of the characters, Clovis, who's in the TV show, did not exist until I did the daily strip. So that was kind of a neat thing. But this is one of my favorite ones. Do you think extraterrestrials are racist? Why do you ask? They never abduct people of color. It's easier to catch white people at night. So, here's the thing, though. Here's the great thing about my readership is they're really smart, really intelligent, and after this strip ran, I started getting all these emails saying, you're wrong, you're wrong. And they sent me newspaper clippings of the first couple that was abducted by aliens. And it was a mixed race couple. It was a black husband and a white wife. And I always say they got caught because of the white wife. Vet mentoring. A guy in my unit smothered an IED, took one for the team. When I got home, I went to tell his loved ones what kind of sacrifice he made. Turns out he was gay. I was the first one to let his partner know what happened. I've shared things with soldiers that I'd never tell family and friends. War does that. Here was a guy who gave his life for his fellow soldiers, but wasn't allowed to share with us who was waiting for him back home. If we're not fighting for this soldier's freedom, then what are we fighting for? So this is a Sunday strip. It's in color because it's a Sunday. And my strip ran in the Washington Post, the Boston Herald. It ran in the San Francisco Chronicle, a bunch of newspapers, and also the San Diego Union Tribune. This is a strip I did about Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Now, Don't Ask, Don't Tell was this terrible rule in the military that says you could be gay, but you can't tell anybody, which is a very silly, silly thing. So I just wanted to put it in a way that was like, okay, so you're putting your life on the line for people, but you can't tell anybody that like you're gay. Like that makes no sense to me. So I try to put it in a way that, you know, it's not a funny strip, but that's the power of comics. Like, it doesn't have to be funny. Like, and I want people to understand that it could still be powerful without being funny. And after this strip ran, I started getting all these emails, especially from San Diego. And they said, hey, I caught your strip in the San Diego Union Tribune. And they said, you've changed my mind on Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And I got like 28 of them, like from military, saying you've changed. And ideally, as a cartoonist, your fantasy is to write a comic that would change people's minds on something, and this was something that really happened. And I told you, my strip ran in the Washington Post too, on Sundays and during the week. So. This is the Oval Office, and our president at the time that it ran. And on the Oval Office and on the desk in the Oval Office are the Sunday comics. Now, my strip ran in April of that year. No, June of that year. And this president repealed Don't Ask, Don't Tell in October of that year. Now, I'm not saying I had anything to do with it, but the evidence is right there. It is right there. So, comics can change the world. I need you to know that. So, feeling empowered, I decided to take a slideshow on the road with me, and I collected all my police brutality cartoons. I had been doing police brutality cartoons for 20 years. And in 2015, I think it was after Ferguson, I decided to take this slideshow out, and I called it, They Shoot Black People, Don't They? And because here's the thing, it just drove me crazy. Like, pundits were saying, why is all this police brutality happening now. It's Obama's fault, you know, just like the liberal media coming up with that stuff. But, you know, essentially it was, you know, a lot of white people saying that because black folks have known that this has been going on forever, like, and has always been going on. And I remember talking about police brutality to my white friends before there were cell phones. And people were like, nah, that wouldn't happen to you. Nah, that wouldn't happen to you. And about 20 years ago, I was hanging up posters for my band, the Marginal Prophets. And I was hanging up just across the street from a church. And in Golden Gate Park, and a car pulls up in front of me, a police car. And the guy jumps out, and he goes, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm hanging up posters for my band." And I said, "This is a stapler. I'm going to put it down on the ground." And he gets on his mic and on his communication thing and said, I found the suspect. And I said, "So, you know, what is this about?" He goes, "You fit the description of someone who's been breaking into apartments in the neighborhood." This was my neighborhood. I said, "What's the description?" And he said, 6 foot tall, black male. I said, "Is there anything else?" She said, "Nope." And so that's any black man, right? So I look down Arguello Street, there's a cop car coming. I look down Fulton Street, there's a cop car coming from the beach. Look up the street, coming down from USF. And right then I was like, wow, like this is it. This is that thing I've been doing comics about, and it's finally happening to me. So as a cartoonist, I was like taking it in from the outside. And you know, it was just really interesting because when I see it happening, I try to like look at the person it's happening to. So I was like trying to look at people as they were going by, and it's just amazing how frightening people think, how scary you are when you're surrounded by police and you catch somebody's eye and they're just like, you know, disturbed, like, oh my God, are they going to get me and stuff. Yeah, you know, it was really interesting. But the most interesting thing was, at the top of the hill, there was a bus turning, and my white roommate was on the bus. And he looked down the street, and he saw all these cops down at the bottom of the hill. And he said, SFPD hassling another black man. And as he got closer, he saw my hair, because I had lots of crazy dreads. And he goes, oh, wait a second. That's my black man. And pulls up. And the bus pulls away, and he's standing across the street. And my roommate was the smallest guy in the house. He was pretty small. But by now, there's about 6 cops around me out there. And he comes running across the street against traffic in slow motion with a look on his face, and he's like, "Get the F away from him," like screaming bloody murder, swearing, yelling, "Get the F away from him," coming at him, coming at these cops. And they all turn around and they see this guy running at them like full speed. And they all turn around and they all go, "Take it easy, man. Take it slow." And right then, I was like, that is white privilege in its essence. Because if he had been black or brown, he would have been tased, he would have been beaten, he could have been shot. And these guys were treating my roommate like he was their manager. And that was the biggest shock of all, out of the whole incident. And you know, one cop showed up from the neighborhood, and he saw me, and he was like, rolled his eyes, and, you know, told me it was an overzealous, rookie cop who heard it from across town. Is like, "I'm going to be a hero, stop the first black man I see," you know? And that's the problem. That's the problem with police. We are exposed to propaganda our whole lives of how many police shows and procedurals do you see on TV all the time? Like, I can name, I don't watch any of them, but I can tell you there's like a million CSIs, there's SWAT, there's new SWAT, old SWAT, there's the rookie, there's, 911, there's all this stuff. And it's all these cops that are outgunned, the system is against them, like, violence is happening all the time, and they can solve it. They solve it in an hour, and they get it all done. And I think we grow up watching this stuff. And hey, listen, I watched SWAT as a kid. I loved the black dude diving through the window and then coming up with the gun. But what happens is a lot of these guys join the police because they want to fight the bad guys and put them in jail and shoot people. And 90% of the time, it's just sitting around in your car doing nothing. And they solve very few crimes. So if you're sitting around for a while, you start looking for crimes to solve. And so that broken taillight is a crime. That jaywalker is a crime. And that stuff escalates. And whenever I do these slideshows, I have people come up to me inevitably and say, well, there's so much crime out there, or there's so much, and crime was so much worse 30, 40 years ago. Like, there's been an uptick in violence, but we're still on this super downswing of as far as violence goes. But I digress. Let's read some comics. Mr. White Police Officer, how many shots does it take for 4 white officers to defend themselves against one unarmed black male? A black male? Well, let's see. Blam, 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 blam. 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 So if you look in the corner, the character is looking at their watch. And that is sort of a trope that cartoonists use for time going by. Blam, 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 blam. Blam, 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 blam. 41. Don't you think that was a little excessive? Listen, you people could avoid getting into these situations if you would just lighten up. So I did this after Amadou Diallo was killed, an African immigrant in New York City. He was in his vestibule of his apartment building when 4 officers opened fire on him as he was getting his ID out, his wallet. And of course, they go on trial. It gets moved to the whitest part of New York. And it's only when a black person's murdered do they move the thing somewhere else. And of course, they get off. And the thing is, they got off because they were defending themselves. And so the point of that strip is like, at what point does it go from defense to offense? And here's the thing. If something happened to me when I was hanging up posters, how do you think I'd be depicted in the media? A rapper was shot by police. He had, a black and silver stapler, looked like a gun. Very probably likely would have found marijuana in my system, And this happens constantly. And this is the firing range where police officers do target practice. How come all the targets are black? What do you mean? They're silhouettes. They're supposed to be black. I'm talking about the afro and the FUBU logo across the chest. Well, I'll be. So this strip ran in 2009. In 2013, a black female person who was part of the National Guard wanted to do target practice at our local police station. So she called them up. They said, sure, come on down. So she goes to the place where they do the target practice with the guns. And for the targets, they had big blown up black and white pictures of black teenagers. And one of them was her brother when he was a teenager. And when the police chief was speaking to the media, this is what he said. It's not illegal what we're doing. And that's it. That's it. Now, I'm sure some of you out there, well, that must be some weird anomaly or something, but it's not. It's not. The vilification of young black men in this country is all American. And what I found after doing these slideshows is nobody knows where the police came from. The police were developed from slave patrols. Slave patrols were poor whites that were hired to chase down runaway slaves, to keep the enslaved population in check. And when the Department of Justice did an analysis of the Ferguson and Baltimore police departments, they said their main goal is to nickel and dime the black and brown communities and keep them in check. So police are doing the exact same thing that they did 200 years ago. The exact same thing. And so we have to ask ourselves, like, what can we do to change this? There's no way we're going to be able to abolish the police. There's no way. There's too many people against that. But there is a way to think differently about policing. And we're taking tiny baby steps, sending social workers to some situations. But I honestly believe that they should take away guns. I think they should keep their guns in there, unless you're coming to a thing where they have guns, or there's a certain section of people that have guns, but most cops, I mean, they do it in other countries. And I also say this, I think when someone is found guilty of police brutality, and a family sues the police department, most of that money should come out of pensions, police pensions. The moment it comes from police pensions is the moment police would start policing themselves. I want it to get to a place where a good police officer, and I'm talking about a police officer who is willing to turn in a bad police officer. I want to see a good police officer protected better than a bad police officer is. Because right now, bad officers are protected far better than good police officers. The good police officers are shunned, they're pushed out of the system, and they're left on their own. I have police in my family, and I won't say anything about anybody's names or anything like that, but I've heard stories. I've heard plenty of stories. So again, it comes down to Black history. And we have to understand that Black history isn't 4 or 5 feel-good stories in February. Black history is American history. Black music is American music. If you go outside the country, everybody loves hip-hop. Everybody loves jazz. Everybody loves sneaker stuff, DJ stuff. Everyone loves high fives. Everybody loves all this stuff. And know what that is? It's Black culture. Black culture is American culture. And we need to teach it, and we need to be proud of it. And why don't we teach music in school, as a regular thing? Ask every kid who their favorite songs are, and then trace that music to inevitably Black people. If it wasn't for Black people, everything on the radio would sound like something from a Renaissance fair. We need to acknowledge Black people have invented the potato chip. Black people invented potato chips. This one guy was working at a diner, and it was purely out of snark. These white people was like, you don't cut our potatoes thin enough. We need thin potatoes. He's like, I'll cut your potatoes thin. And he cut them so thin that he created the potato chip, and it was this huge hit. Black people invented the slap shot in hockey. The descendants of freed slaves up north in Canada had their own hockey league, and they totally changed the game. And the NHL and all these folks took what they were doing and created the NHL. We need to do this not only to uplift, and it should be, and I'm just talking, because I'm black, but we should be learning about the Asian contributions to this country, the Latino contributions, all types of folks. Because here's the deal. When straight white people just think they did everything, whenever there's proof that they didn't do it, they think aliens did it. I swear to you, there are people that I know that think aliens built the pyramids. And it's crazy, right? It's crazy. And we spend so little time on understanding how this country was built. My question to all of you here is, what could you build if you had centuries of free labor? What could you build? And if you wanted more labor, you would take one aside and assault them, impregnate them, and make more labor. And if you didn't want that labor, you could sell and make money. So what happens to that when you have this, and then is that a pencil right there? I want to demonstrate something. And I hope this isn't anybody's pencil, but okay. It takes a lot less time to break something than it does to fix something. So we spent centuries of breaking people. That centuries of breaking people is not going to be fixed with 50 years of affirmative action and 8 years of a black president. It's going to be 500 years, but we first have to acknowledge. We first have to acknowledge what happened. And so many people say, well, the Irish had it bad when we came over. Look, the Irish did not come over in the bottom of boats lined like sardines in chains, crapping themselves, vomiting on themselves. If some had babies, they would throw the babies over the sides to the sharks. People brought piles of people over with the idea of most of them dying. But the strongest ones, we will rip apart from their families, take their names away, destroy their very beings, and sell them. You can't understand what that does, not only to the people themselves, but the people that do that. If you talk to any descendants of victims of the Holocaust, it's in their genes. They carry, there's more depression, there's more thoughts of suicide. They carry that. Imagine what black folks are carrying today, and imagine what white people are carrying today. In fact, I think that's why so many white people get all mad and make up the excuses, oh, that was a long time ago. Get over it. And I always say, Jesus was a long time ago, and you don't hear anybody saying, get over that. Take that into mind, that we are a very young country. We have people. My mom picked cotton in Georgia as a child. Her sister had to pick cotton, extra cotton for her, so she would not get beaten. They weren't slaves because they got paid pennies a day. they weren't slaves because they got paid pennies a day. We have people in prison that are making stuff, lingerie, car parts, computer parts. They get paid pennies a day. They're not slaves because they get paid pennies a day. We went from free labor to very low-cost labor. In fact, the South made the argument that we can't get rid of slavery because it will destroy the whole economy. And everything that's happened after slavery is just trying to keep that economy going. And that's by using immigrant labor, using prison labor, paying people horrible wages. And we need to understand that. That is the legacy of what this country is. And if we don't acknowledge that, we're destined to do the same things over and over again. That's why we go back. I swear to you, if you know Black history, everything that's happening today, everything is explained. The stuff that everyone's doing, banning books from all the libraries and schools and all that stuff. Southern women joined all the school boards after the Civil War to say you can't teach the Civil War wasn't about slavery. We can't teach it that way, you know? We got to say that the South had heroes and this and all that. The immigrants, the folks who were shipped to Massachusetts in 1961, Southern segregationists put 250 Black people on buses and sent them to Massachusetts and said, when you get off, President Kennedy is going to be there. He's going to give you jobs and stuff. Everything that is happening now has happened before. And we have to acknowledge that. And that's the only way we're going to solve it. All right. So one of the things they, just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You saw the comic earlier. Blacks were promised 40 acres and a mule. It was never gotten. So we had no bootstraps to pick ourselves up from. Yet we still established successful communities. Places like Tulsa, Rosewood, Wilmington. And what happened? White people got mad. They didn't want to see Black people succeed. So they burned them down. We have to acknowledge that. And, you know, it's like the game of Monopoly, right? Let's just say all the white people walked in here and saw a bunch of Black people playing Monopoly, and they'd been playing it for 4 hours. And the Black folks turned and said, hey, you guys want to play? You'd look up at the Monopoly game and you'd be like, wait a second, like, you know, everything's bought up. You have all the hotels and you have all the, and the Black people would turn and go, hey, we started out with $200. We're going to give you $200. What are you complaining about? That is America right there. That is America. So, you know, the education that everyone was getting at state schools, you know, my grandmother couldn't go to colleges that other folks were going to. They couldn't get the education. And then they couldn't be a part of, like, the mortgages that the government offered for folks in the military, the GI Bills. Everyone knows that building wealth starts with home ownership. And in the 30s and 40s, white people were given the opportunity to own their first house, to pass it down and pass it down. Black folks weren't allowed to do that, and they were forced into certain communities, and they're redlined, so they couldn't get loans, and they're stuck there. And I don't know if you noticed, but it's generally the east side of town. Now, I know we're in the East Bay, so I don't know. But no, like everywhere if you go to any city on the other side of the country and in the middle of the country, the east side is generally the worst part of town. And that's where they put the sewage and because that's where the wind blows. The wind all blows that way. So it's generally the worst part of town. And that's generally where the Black neighborhood is. And it's usually way more concrete, you know, not enough trees, you know, just a mess. And it's that's no coincidence. That is no coincidence. And this idea of schools being funded by the communities, by the taxes, that's just perpetually making underprivileged schools just completely underprivileged. We should equitably fund schools, and the schools in the bad communities should be getting way more now to get them to be, as good as the other schools, the years that they've been neglected. And I will say this, well, I'll get to that. Sorry. But here's the thing. There were so many stories that, it doesn't have to be negative, horrible stories, but like Robert Smalls is this great thing that we should be teaching. Robert Smalls was a guy born into slavery, South Carolina, dressed up like his captain who was on this Confederate ship. He dressed up and stole a Confederate boat and picked up his family and sailed up to the Union boats. And then he convinced Abraham Lincoln to use freedmen in the Union Army. And then he went, after the thing was over, he went back down, bought his old house that he grew up a slave in. And when his master's wife got out of a sanatorium, because I'm sure lots of people went crazy, he let her sleep in her own bed till she died. And reparations. There were reparations given after the Civil War. You know who they were given to? White slave owners for losing their property. This is the stuff that needs to be taught. Josephine Baker, she was a spy for the French. There's a great graphic novel about her. We should be learning about her. It shouldn't just be, she's like a nude dancer in Paris. And, what is the reason why she went to Paris? Because she got treated like crap in the U.S. And that's the thing that drives me crazy. We have soldiers, I ask people, did we have black soldiers in World War I? Yes, we did. Did we have black soldiers in World War II? Yes, we did. They were fighting for the rights of people overseas that they didn't have rights to back home. Like, they didn't have these rights. Soldiers would come back, black soldiers, and they'd get, the people that they served with, the white people, would terrorize them. My dad won't come to the South and visit us in the South because of what he experienced in the military in the South back in the day. He will not come, and I respect that because it was horrible. It was deplorable. And we see what happened to this guy. The NFL is just, it's a mess, and it's a horrible, I hope no one puts their kids, I've seen it happen, like some of the schools near us can't even field a football team, and now they're trying to sell kids on football with flag football and stuff like that. I did a strip that, basically what's going to happen is so few people get into football that they're going to start drafting kids to play football, like the military, and they'll have to escape up to Canada and play in the CFL. So I just want to say, before Colin Kaepernick, there was Muhammad Ali, who was once one of the most hated men in the country. And now he's this wonderful, beloved thing. But he was someone who stood up to the BS. And so many people write about online, Martin Luther King did it right. He protested right. He didn't block all this stuff and that. This is a comic strip from when Martin Luther King was around. They talked about the same thing. Oh, why are you destroying everything? Why are you, blocking everything, doing all this stuff? And he, was one of the most hated men in the country. Once he started talking about more than civil rights and started talking about workers' rights and everything, that was too much, and they took him out. And I know people who have family members who would have the gun, a recreation of the gun that killed Martin Luther King, over the mantle of their fireplace. That exists. So, we come back to this picture. It's so much better knowing what this picture is about. It is about busing. The black man there is a lawyer. And the rest of these folks are poor whites, really angry because they're shipping black kids to their schools. Now, here's the thing. If you just funded the schools in the black neighborhoods, well, you wouldn't have to send the kids to the other schools. I was doing a slideshow in New Orleans, and I remember there was a construction worker there, and he goes, I was part of those desegregation when the schools desegregated. And he goes, the old black schools may not have had very good equipment, but they had teachers that actually cared about teaching the black students. You had white teachers who were very angry that they had to teach black kids. And that goes a long way. When you have teachers that don't expect much from you, that is the most dangerous thing. There was a survey. It was either, what was the most important thing? Parental involvement? Oh, I can't remember what the other thing was. And it was also teacher expectation. The highest thing by far was teacher expectation. If your teacher does not care about you, you're destined to go right down the tubes. All right. So, and here's the thing. It's all these poor folks and I just look at those buildings. All the rich people are up in the buildings just sitting there with a big smile on their face. Like, go ahead, fight each other. Go ahead, fight each other. And it goes all the way back to the history of this country, which is how rich white people going, how can we prevent poor white people from coming to get our stuff? We just gotta tell them that at least they're doing better than the people of color in this country. And that's always been the case. As long as we're butting heads, the rich people sit there and go ahead and do that. Go ahead and do that. All right. Enough of this talk. My TV show. So I made a TV show with Hulu. And what I love about it is they let me do all this stuff that apparently they don't let creators, like the cartoonists usually, like they just buy the stuff from the cartoonist and say, okay, go away, we're gonna go wreck your comic for you. But it was so important for me to be a part of every aspect of the production of it because I was like, so many people would say, oh, Hollywood took it and they screwed up my stuff. And so I was like, if they're going to screw up my stuff, I want to be right there. So when it's happening, I'm like, oh, okay, this is where it goes bad. So I worked in the writer's room. I was on set. I picked costumes. I picked actors. I did the drawings, obviously. And I even made appearances in the show. This is that incident I talked about. The pilot sort of is based on the incident that happened to me with the police. Lamorne Morris plays me. He's on the left there. And Gunther my roommate Gunther is played by Blake Anderson from Workaholics. And can you just look at the police, the guy who plays the policeman, look at his face. And it was really weird because when we did season 2, so many white actors were reaching out to all of us in the show and saying, can I play the racist cop, please? Can I play the racist cop? So, the director, this guy in the glasses, Mo Marable, is the reason why I think the show was so fun and cool with all the puppetry and the animation that was going on in it. He was really into, I don't want T2D animation, I want puppetry, I want surrealism. And so he really elevated it and made it really work. T. Murph on the right there was the breakout star. It was his first role. Clovis was supposed to be much bigger with dreads, and he came in with the big beard and the small body and really just ran with it and had a great time. This is me in my first appearance in the show. I'm in episode 7 of the show. I'm dressed as a koala, and I punch my character in the face. And I remember I couldn't see out of the head, and so I would just hear the director, okay, koala, move forward, move to the right, and now swing. And I just remember when I did that, I heard someone, one of the extras go, I don't think he's ever thrown a punch in his life. They may be right. This is me on the set of season 2, and this is one of my favorite episodes in season 2, which features Isaiah Whitlock Jr., who was in The Wire. He was Clay Davis, if you're familiar with The Wire. He had a particular, I'm not going to swear in a church, but he had a particular thing that he said in The Wire, which everybody knows. And he was amazing. It was really fun to shoot that episode. But my most favorite is episode 7. And this is where Ayana, played by Sashir Zamata, takes mushrooms and goes to a motel and takes the BART to the end of the line and then goes to a motel. And basically, she's tripping on mushrooms and she conjures up some historical ladies from the past. And it was a parody of One Night in Miami, which was originally a play and now is a really cool movie that you should check out. It's like a meeting of Muhammad Ali and Malcolm X and Sam Cooke. But this was really fun, and the woman in the pink is Harriet Tubman's secret girlfriend, and she was like the best, the breakout star of that. So the second appearance of me is in the first episode of the second season, and I am the mime at the very beginning. And the funny thing is we had run out of money, and the mime that we wanted to hire was asking for too much money. And so I said, I'll play the mime. And the saddest thing about it was all I needed was the makeup. Apparently, I didn't change any of the clothes I was wearing. I dress like a low-rent mime. So what has happened since then? Wonderful things have happened. I've earned my honorary doctorate from my alma mater in Salem State College, Salem State University, so I'm now a doctor. I put doctor in all my comics now. I'm waiting for someone to say, you can stop that now. And also my hometown, I did a mural for my hometown. So if you walk in Malden, Massachusetts, just north of Boston, you can walk along the art line and you will see my Life's Little Victories that are exclusively for Malden. And yeah, so that's really kind of cool. And there's one last thing I wanted to talk about, which is this project that I'm doing called the Black Mugshots Project. So I have this thing about black mugshots. I got a real problem with it. Whenever I go to look online for news, I always see pictures of black people in mugshots being arrested. And here's the thing. Most mugshots that you see, the people have not been charged with anything. They're not guilty of anything. They've just been picked up. The problem is they post these mugshots and they don't take them down. You never have any follow-up. So whenever this person is going for a job, whenever this person's going for an apartment, credit, they're going on a date, somebody looks them up and their mugshot comes up. And this affects them throughout their whole lives. In other countries, it's actually illegal to post someone's mugshot if they haven't been charged with anything, but not in the US. There are literally companies that will contact you and say, we will charge you $1,000 and we'll wipe your mugshot off the internet. Now, $1,000 may not mean much to some people, but to a lot of people, that's a lot of money. There are places like Utah that have passed a law that says you can't post people's mugshots. But the only reason why that happened is because some white dude had his mugshot posted and went through hell. But thankfully, there is a law it's just being talked about in North Carolina that's it doesn't go as far as the Utah law, but it goes at least ways enough to get rid of these companies. If you see your mugshot up there, you have to, the law would be, you have to take this down. And they have 5 days to take it down. If they don't take it down, they get charged $100 a day. So, maybe that will help. But I basically bought the URL, blackmugshots.com, and I took a picture of myself with a mug of tea. And I said I wanted to see how long it would take to fool the algorithm of Google and get onto the Black Mugshots front page. And it took me a month and a half. But it took getting written up by the Washington Post, by the Philadelphia Tribune or something, Seattle Times, Boston.com, and people had to take it, and I posted it everywhere. I put hashtag Black Mugshots, and people started sending me their own mugshots. So black people can use any mug, but non-black people have to have a black mug, so I can call it Black Mugshots. And so we built this whole website of Black Mugshots. And so you can go there, but it also has all these links about the effects that mugshots have on communities, especially communities of color. And so if you're into it, please send me a black mugshot, and I'll get it up there. And here's the proof that I made it up there. So that's me on the first page. But just one last thing. If I have a bumper sticker on the back of my car that says, "Save the rainforests," it does not mean screw the other forests. It means the rainforests are being cut down at an alarming rate, and we need to help stop that. And it's the same with Black Lives Matter. Yes, all lives matter, but it seems in the media with a lot of cops that black lives don't seem to matter. So it's really important that we hammer that home and value black lives, value black voices, value indigenous voices, value Asian voices. We need to hear from folks that we don't usually hear from. And I know it happens a lot. Someone comes up to me and says, "Well, Keith, I'm not racist. I teach my kids not to be racist." Here's the deal. I don't litter. I teach my kids not to litter. But it does not mean that we don't volunteer to clean up our local forest or clean up the beaches, because we live in a world that has a system that litters and destroys forests and beaches, and that's what racism is. We have a system in place that needs to be dismantled, and the only way we can dismantle it is if we acknowledge that it exists and call people out. And it's not easy. It's not easy when you start doing it, but it gets easier the more you do it. And I tell you this, that person at dinner time might be mad when you bring it up, but I tell you this, they'll think twice the next time they say something, next time they're over your house. I had someone write to me through Facebook, someone I went to school with. And she said, "Keith, I don't know if you remember me, but you were in my dormitory." And I told a joke. This was like 40 years ago. 30 years ago, maybe. I don't know, I can't remember. But she said, "I told this joke, and you politely took me aside and told me why it was BS and that it was offensive and that you shouldn't say it." And she said, "You know, I had the usual reaction to it, but it sat with me." And she said, like, it sat with her for years. And then she started, like, sort of observing her parents and her family and some of the jokes that she started calling them out on it. And then she was just talking about how she got older and her child started playing with kids that she never played with when she was a kid. She just said, "I wanted you to know how much you saying that to me meant." I don't remember this person at all. I don't remember the incident. I may have been stoned. But the thing is, it resonated with them. and it stuck with them. And you just never know when that stuff happens. You don't know how people are affected. So when you feel like it's not going to matter, or it does matter. It does. So when you leave here, I hope that you consider that. And I want you to understand, especially white people here, that you could leave here and never even acknowledge anything. Like, you can go through your life and never have any discussions amongst white people about any of this stuff. That's white privilege. Black folks, indigenous folks, Asian folks, and in order for us to be successful in this country, we have to learn to deal with white people. You don't have to learn to deal with any of us. You don't have to interact with us. There are people, the most successful people in the world, white people, they don't have to deal with people of color. But I would say this, you will have a better life if you did. So let's all live better lives, and thank you very much. Thank you. So I know I went long, but if you have any questions, if you have any, if you want to yell at me and say, you're full of crap. But if you have any questions, please feel free. Yes, and I will repeat the question so we can hear it on the.
This is going to be a long question. So I'm Dr. Diane Johnson, and it's delightful meeting you. And I'm blessed enough to actually work with UUA, University Association, as their one of their organizational development consultants, specifically working on justice, equity, and diversity issues within the association.
Yeah, a mic would be good.
Great. All right. I guess I'll do that quickly. So Reverend Dr. Diane Johnson, delightful to be here. I'm blessed to work with UUA on their justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion work. I've been doing that for the last 5 years. So Keith, there are so many different things that I want to say. The first one is about the power of the intersection of art and social justice and change. That's really amazing. Thank you for all your work.
Thank you.
And my question is, given that you're consistently talking to colleges, universities, congregations, what is, other than that fabulous invitation about let's live better lives, can you, especially these contemporary times and the level of bifurcation and animosity between those who want to continue white supremacy and Christian white supremacy, and those of us who want to kind of protect democracy. What do you feel is the role that congregations and faith-based organizations can do in their journey towards ending racism and ending white supremacy and advocating for justice?
Well, I would just say, I generally like to sort of say, you got to be able to call out your own. And so, listen, and this has always been the case. White people will listen to white people talk about racism a lot easier than hearing from me. And so white people need to talk with white people. Churches need to talk with churches. Men need to talk with men about sexism. We need to hold folks to higher standards and not let things go. And it's not easy. And relationships may be strained. But if they were true relationships, where the people truly cared, then they would welcome being questioned and asked, why? Like, this does not fit your mission statement, you know? It's, so I feel like it's up to each one of us to say, like, you know, you see it happening, you call it out, and whether it's an entity, whether it's a school, whether it's a church, whether it's at your workplace, and it's not easy, but I just think that the stuff that happens, whether it's good or bad, it's gonna put you on a path. Like, you know, if someone told me, oh, that police incident that happened to you 20 years ago, well, you know, you're gonna use that in a TV show one day. Like, you just don't know. But we are the result of everything good and everything bad that happens to us. And there are ways to look, it wasn't until I moved to the South and where I realized I stand on the shoulders of the strongest, most creative people who are under the worst duress who survived. And once you look at things a different way, it just empowers you, you know? I remember people would say, Barack Obama, first black president, that's a wonderful black accomplishment. It's not a black accomplishment. It's a white accomplishment. There have been plenty of black people that could be president before then, but this is the first time enough white people were like, well, I'm going to vote for him. Like, even straight up, I did a comic. This is when I knew Barack Obama was going to become president, is when a canvasser was going around, and this was a real story I read, where she asked, like, you know, who are you going to vote for? And the white people in there said, we're going to vote for the N-word. That was their answer. And I was like, all right, like, if straight up racist people are voting for him, like, but, like, I mean, for better or for worse, this is the country that we're in. And we have to learn to deal with it. And right now, it may seem like it's all going to crap, but here's the thing. The a-holes are always the loudest people. Whether it's on a plane, whether it's at a baseball game, they're the loudest people. There are far more good people than bad people. And some of those good people don't even realize they're good yet. And they just need to be educated a little bit. And I really feel, you know, that's one of the things, you know, people say, oh, how come you're so optimistic? Like, generally my comics are really optimistic. I just showed you all the downer ones. But actually, I really feel like we're better than where we're at right now. I just think it needs to it's like anything. When you get sick, you have to hit a bottom before you start going back up. And I'm not sure where that bottom is, but we will come back up. So, but we can't just sit back. We can't sit on the sidelines. That's the thing. We have to participate. All right. Another question? Yes. We're going to bring the microphone over to you.
Thank you. All right, there we are. You have a wonderful gift for taking very complicated and very fraught topics and explaining them and making them accessible, I think, to populations that don't think about it or don't really understand it or are afraid to ask about it.
That's what cartoonists do.
Yeah, well, it's great.
Cartoonists are the court jesters of today. We speak truth to power, a lot of times through humor, but we are poking fun and hopefully pointing out truths.
Well, and it's more than that. And I hope, in the way the MacArthur Foundation has recognized other cartoonists like Alison Bechtel, I dearly hope they're looking at you. I really do.
Oh wow! I think I have to get nominated. Someone's going to nominate.
I wish I had that power. Here's my question. My question is, the question of reparations is really complicated. It's something people don't think about much. And I'm just wondering if you have thought about it, or it's something that you would tackle in your work.
I have thought about it, very much so. So there's a couple ways to think about this. And I heard some really great ideas. And one is we can give out reparations by the amount of money, the wealth that families have. And that's the thing about racism, the way it's perpetrated in this country, is we don't really talk about race, but the laws affect people racially. So we just say, like, why don't we give out baby bonds to, we give out this value baby bonds to people who have this little money, and then we give this little baby bond to people who have that much money. And we don't have to say anything about race. But, folks who know that, like, the average wealth of white families is like 200 times the amount of black families. And so it would just, having that would happen. But the other thing I would say is this. I think we should redo the marijuana laws so all business has to go through black people. Much like indigenous people have casinos, black people should control weed in this country. Because, listen, 90% of the people in jail for weed are black folks, and 10% are, like other folks. But 95% of the businesses are white owned, and like 2% are black owned. And like a lot of those times, it's because they have records from weed stuff. So the indigenous people have casinos, Jewish people have space lasers, and black people can have the weed. So I'm only half joking when I say that. I really think that would be a thing. Any other questions? Yes, sir. There's a microphone right there.
As somebody who does a little writing myself on a very small scale, I get annoyed when words are co-opted. And I think the word woke is a fine word, and it means things. I've been called woke myself. Once, I was quite complimented by it. So how do we take it back by the good people like us?
There's nothing. I mean, it's a concerted effort to vilify this word, much like they did politically correct. And so woke is the new politically correct. And it may have something to do with like people being not wanting to watch the show because they don't want to be preached to. And the thing is, like, if you see the show, you see that the show makes fun of it as much as it embraces it. And so I will say this. This is a moment, it will go past, and people will stop saying it and blah, blah, blah. And, what I hope is that my show will continue to live on, and people discover it now. It's not getting a season 3, but people are still constantly discovering it, and I hope that it's same with my comics. It's something that will live on down the line, long after this anti-woke movement is over.
I'm woke and I'm proud of it, man.
All right. There's a question by the fine person that introduced me.
I don't know if this will help you with the green people and the purple people, but as a white person, one of the most useful things that was said to me in the last couple of years was this, upon hearing a white person saying, well, I don't see color, you have to point out to them that they don't see their own color. And that really changes the conversation.
Oh, okay.
Because they don't see their own impact. They're looking out at others, but they need to be looking at themselves.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to put it.
Yeah, it was.
But I probably wouldn't put it that way because I want people to acknowledge you know, like the fact, I mean, first that it's a real silly thing to say, but two is like, you should be psyched that you're sitting in front of, you know, a person of color. And that, because honestly, most white people don't know any black people or Asian people or you know, they'll say they know them, but like, you know, it's because they passed somebody on the street or they, so just to be able to have that conversation, you should be psyched. Now, you shouldn't go around saying, oh, I'm not racist, I know this black person. But you should be able to understand that you can be sexist, you can be racist, even though you know people. Like, I think that's the thing that sort of, and that's the thing I think we try to make fun of in the show, which is just because you're in the Bay Area doesn't mean that you can't be racist, you know? Like, and just because people are in the South doesn't mean that they don't see, you know, their privilege and their race. You know, there were some places where they do tours and they actually talk about it in a way. Now, most places don't, but it's just really interesting to take some of these farm tours and they say, oh, you know, my great-grandfather worked really hard. No, your great-grandfather was whipping people who were working really hard out there, you know? And I wish but people don't like to talk about it. It's like a really shameful thing. And yeah, but here's the thing. I think racist is the N-word for white people. White people, you can call them anything you want. Racist is the worst thing you can say. I've never seen anyone get more defensive than white people when you say, hey, you're racist. No, I'm not. And you gotta take that in and say, so why, you know, like think about like, why would anyone say that to me? Like, and think about it. Just think about it. Because I think for white people, they've had their voices in front all the time, that when someone else speaks, it's dismissed very quickly.
My actual question was about how did you get woke done? I mean, there are a lot of television shows with African-American people. I don't know if they're African-American directors or how deep it goes. There are a lot of shows, but woke is different. So how did you get this to happen?
Well, I mean, I think this is one of the reasons why I got the show it was different in the sense that I came in and I said to them, you know, I wanted to place this character up front. And the first thing I wanted to do was, you know, when we play music, the first music that I want to hear is, one, it's a female voice singing, but it's rock and roll playing, and he's wearing a Dead Kennedys t-shirt, because I've never seen, I haven't seen that enough, especially on a mainstream TV show. But it was important to do something a little different. But it was just, I think it was important for them. Hulu did a great job, and they wanted my voice to be all through the show. And when they didn't see it in some of the scripts, they would say, Keith's voice is not in this. You know, send it back. You need to, you know. And I think that was super important. But I've just done what I've always done, which is tell my story. And I say this, I spoke to art students earlier today. Tell your story. Tell your specific story. Everybody. Because if you don't tell it, somebody else is going to tell it, and they're going to get it wrong. And, you know, there's some younger folks in the back. You ever notice how all the stuff written about your generation is negative? Young people. It's written by bitter old people. And they're always like, well, what's wrong with kids these days? They don't do anything. They're entitled, blah, blah, blah. Write your own story, because that's where you get the true. And for far too long, black people have been written by white people. Like, all the time, like all the old sitcoms, all that stuff. Like, my wife is from Germany, and she said, when she met all my friends, she's like, it's funny, like, black people don't speak in person like you do in the movies. And I said, do you know who approves all this stuff in the movies? Is white people. Yeah, we like the loud, obnoxious, blah, 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 like, that reinforces that idea, Like, I don't know. I can get into it, but yeah, it's very hard for black people to control the images that we have, because eventually it always goes through white people, and if it doesn't get white approved, it's hard to get through. I will just say this one thing. At the end of the pilot, the first episode, my character gets mugged by a black guy, and the question was, why is his mugging less scary than the police? And I said that's the point. Is like the police are state-sanctioned soldiers that can take you out and they will never go to jail for it, So that interaction with the police is far scarier to me as a black man than getting mugged by somebody who looks like me. And so they were like, well, we want to make it scarier. We want to give them a gun. And there were 3 things I didn't want. I didn't want black people with guns. I didn't want a black man dressed as a woman just for laughs. Like, they could be trans, but they can't just be in drag just for some stupid reason. And the third would be black people just dancing, dancing in the opening or whatever. And so we compromised. And he never pulls a gun. He has the gun in his thing, because they just had to make it scarier. I said, you want to make him scarier because as a white person, that's the scariest thing. Black man with a gun robbing me. And they just don't see cops as scary. And I remember my director saying, who are we making this show for? Who are we making this show for? And that, I think it's hard, for someone who has everything made for them suddenly get something that may not be made for them, and it's very jarring. This is our lives as black people, Every day I have to see some weird clip on Facebook or Twitter, and one clip gets to me a lot. It's the Brady Bunch Variety Hour. And Brady Bunch, after their show was over, they had a variety hour. None of them could sing, yet there was a sequence of them singing Earth, Wind, and Fire. And it is traumatizing to me every time I see it. Instead of just having Earth, Wind, and Fire perform, they have these uncoordinated, terrible singing people. And I have to look at that. Like, somehow every day there's something like that. We live that all the time. We live that all the time. When we shot in Atlanta the second season, I was, for the first time in my life, and listen, I do not dislike Billy Joel, but in Atlanta, for the first time for 2 months, I did not hear Billy Joel on the radio for the first time in my life in 2 months. Now, again, I don't have a problem with Billy Joel, but I feel like Al Green should be played just as much as Billy Joel. And I have to sit through Billy Joel all the time. Sorry. I will not rant anymore. But that's what living in a white society does. It's weird. That's weird. I'm sorry. Okay, are there any more questions? Yes, sir.
Now that you've conquered Hollywood, what's your next project? What are you working on?
I'm working on, I have a new idea for a show, and it's political satire. I can't really get into it, but, I hope that my brand is smart, funny, and thoughtful. And I think this new project is smart, funny, and thoughtful. And, my management said, listen, you have 2 successful seasons under your belt. This is, you have another opportunity this is the one time you'll be able to walk into any studio right now, and they'll take your meeting. So I just want to make sure I have all my ducks in a row and just like go in and smash it, just like hope for the best and get another show going. But, a few other things. I have a graphic novel project that I'm finishing up. I have some ideas for some other projects. We'll see. I can't really talk about them yet. But, my favorite thing is talking, going around the country and speaking to different communities. I think there's no greater joy than to meet people and interact with people. And I think that's something that's been missing, and one of the reasons why we're in such a hole right now. It's very easy to call someone something bad on the internet. It's not as easy doing it in person. So I appreciate being here with you tonight, and I'd like to thank everybody for bringing me here. And I have books and prints over here, so if you guys want to continue the conversation, please come on up and let's continue this. Thank you.
Hey, you're Keith Knight. I'm an ally. I still post black squares to Instagram every week.
Actually, you can stop doing that.
Keith is not just an artist, he is an activist.
The correct term is artivist.
Okay.
They want my fitness on the front page. Headline.
I have 15,000 followers.
Damn, Keithy K.
You wanted to be a big name activist, right? Congratulations, you did that.
My bro is headlining a protest.
No, man. I'm trying to hit the club. Introduce the ladies to these new abs. Abraham Lincoln, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Let it ride out. I do prescription in Dior frame. Sunshine.
I do hate police brutality, but I have to talk about other issues.
Now who are you?
So you can't solve one thing, but you're gonna solve everything.
Bigger platform comes with a bigger microscope, and activists are vicious.
Hella vicious.
I told you I got this.
Share your thoughts on hunger.
Daylight savings time.
Save the tree frogs, brother.
Look who's cracking under pressure.
Look, I just gotta figure out how to bring people together. Activism doesn't have to be art.
Who wants croissants?
That's the whitest shit I've heard all day.
What is this? Thank God Almighty, Wi-Fi is free at last.
Corporations are trash.
Who are you?
Y'all gotta get some black and brown folks in here to tell you that black Wi-Fi matters or whatever stupid slogan you come up with next ain't cool.
It's actually our first idea, just the fist.
Put the fist down.
Don't get so caught up in the cause that you forget what is going on right in front of you.
How are we supposed to understand each other when we're all so different?
Show us how you wash up.
Do the pits.
Nice.
Privates. Turn the water off and seize the day.
What about your legs?
The water takes the soap and it trickles down my body.
Oh, yeah.
Now who are you? Oh, I don't know. Who are you? Hold up. Who are you? Now who are you?
Just go full common.
So you think I should go on stage, say a bunch of vague yet uplifting shit in a weird cadence like I'm at a poetry slam?
Exactly.
One world, oneness, y'all.
I can't believe you went full common.
Girl, everybody love common.
I love common.
Who are you? Oh, no, no. Hold up.